Hey, this is Gavin, and this was some comments from my Aunt Debra in the video Quest Ion about tools which corrupt with Whitestone name. Aunt Debra. So I switched to this YouTube channel, and she's a subscriber. I love Aunt Debra. She has been very kind and compassionate quite often throughout my life. My mom died when I was 2 years old. I was I was raised by my father, and my aunts, including Aunt Debra, was there to help and shaped me into who I am. And I think I'm all right. And so Aunt Debra says, "Know if Jesus was raised from dead, if you believe. God allows. Be careful, very careful." So Aunt Debra is telling me her view, and I think she believes it's true. And it seems to me that she does not wander into thoughts about what if it's not true. And that's interesting because that indicates a capacity to do error correction, right? So if you believe something that's not true and you want to and you are interested in knowing the truth, then you would need to be willing to do error correction. And the way you do that is to be able to put your belief to the side, analyze that belief, consider alternative hypotheses, things like that. I responded, Satan, the ruler of this world, likes to encourage humans to torture and kill people who step out of line. That's what happens. And Deborah responded, Gavin, Satan encourages people to believe they have the power, not God. And I'm just wondering, it's like, what's her authority in saying this? Has she ever met Satan? Because I have. Where does she get this? And has she ever considered alternative views and setting her belief to the side and analyzing the costs and benefits of the view in comparison to other hypotheses? Like I presented, right? She's maybe trying to supplement what I said. I don't think she's disagreeing with what I said. She says Satan encourages hate, torture, etc., regardless of a person's actions. And I disagree with this kind of sentiment here, because she says regardless of a person's actions, as if hate and torture is right. I think we can say that this hate and torture is understandable, why people do it, but I would not say it is right. I think we should love our enemies. I think we can be disappointed with our enemies, but I think we should love our enemies. And I think Satan's primary mode of operation is through arrogance. And the arrogance is, basically you can measure arrogance by measuring people's capacity to change their mind in order to produce more fruit with regard to their goal. And then she says, evil needs no excuse, reason to exist. And which is interesting. I just note that, I think we both believe there's a creator who created the story we're in, including the one where we agree there is evil and agree there is Satan. So I don't know her point, but I'll add that. I respond, Satan benefits when righteous people do not try to gain power, for whatever reason, including belief that God has more power than God actually has. And so this is me attempting to present an alternative view in which what she believes could be wrong. So there's a different hypothesis in which her set of beliefs could be a delusion, which then has an impact on the world and our capacity to produce good fruit with regard to some goal. What is the goal? We haven't got there yet. My goal is peace on earth and the kingdom of heaven on earth, and creating that. That would be the goal of my church. I don't know the goal of Aunt Debra's church and the goal of her life. And we could complement each other, and I think my church could create tools which would be useful for her church and her goals, which are different. Could be. She responds, I believe God is all powerful, to which I gave it the heart because she shared her belief, and I'm not trying to change her belief. And I want to encourage people to share their beliefs, and I like to understand people's beliefs. And then she said, Satan gains power when arrogant people feel superior to others for their beliefs in an all-powerful God. I would say the key there is arrogance, when people are arrogant. Arrogant about what? It doesn't even matter. Just arrogance. Like when you think you know the truth, to the extent that you're not willing to consider alternatives in order to improve your understanding of the truth, that is arrogance. And it limits your capability to learn, which limits your capability to produce good fruit. I do think she maybe was trying to poke at me because I think she thinks I'm arrogant. That's my suspicion. It seems like she thinks I'm arrogant, which, like, it's understandable why people hate and torture. It's also understandable why people think I'm arrogant. But like I said, the true metric of arrogance would be capacity to learn and increase productivity towards the goal. So that would be how I measure arrogance. She says, I do not need to feel God actually needs my help to resurrect me when he returns. And so I would have liked this second sentence just because that's her belief. But I would just, for me, I see that belief as being a risk in an alternative hypothesis about the world we live in. I said, I'll just repeat what you said when you said be careful, right? So like she can believe these things, but if our world is different from the world that she believes we're in, then she might be, she could be contributing more to productivity than she already is. And then she says, always am when Jesus is involved. And it's like, well, be careful. So there's a capacity to care, and then there's like different people have different capacity to care, and so it's like, it's not binary that you do care or you don't care. There is an amount of care. So to say I always am, I think we also should recognize that different people have different capacity to care. Different people have different strengths and weaknesses, right? I think this is one point that she doesn't realize about me is the icon, which is the Star of David. The pyramid is a competence hierarchy, like our ability with a skill, and we will have strengths, and if you can invert it, we will also have weaknesses, and we can then complement each other with our strengths and weaknesses in order to be more productive and cooperate together toward our common goals. Like, you have to know that I see the world that way now. I didn't always see the world that way. I was very arrogant, and so it's also understandable why she thinks I'm still arrogant. But yeah, I realize I have weaknesses. One of my biggest weaknesses is my inability to communicate. This is the third time I've tried to record this thing. I was crying in the first one. Please note addition of an important word I left out in my haste in my reply just before this one. I responded, I've met Jesus in 2 dreams. In the first dream, you and Joey were there watching me and Jesus being tortured. And just for Aunt Debra's sake, the word is pillory, head and arms enclosed, side by side, dirty, lacking clothing, surrounded by people in a dark room, and among those people were my Aunt Debra and my cousin Joey. Now, she's going to go in and interpret the situation, but I've always kind of avoided interpreting the situation. Like, maybe I asked her not to intervene, right? It's like, I don't know. But she somehow runs off with an interpretation, which is, like, that's the spirit of arrogance, is the interpreting things and kind of the willingness to question your own interpretation of what you think is true. That is what is connected to arrogance and that capacity to learn. We could learn together, though. Aunt Debra, there is no entity as capable of torturing Jesus, which is interesting because there is this story I've heard about where Jesus was crucified, and I consider crucifixion to be torture. He spoke the creation into being. dream, quote unquote, was Satan's nightmare for you. And this is the point that I respond to next. Like it seems like she hopped to an interpretation and disregarded what I had experienced and said. That helps explain some of your attitude towards me in faith, and I appreciate the enlightenment sincerely. Right? And so she jumped into conclusions and interpretations. I guarantee you she has created a delusion within her mind. Like every interpretation is a delusion, and she's done it. Because like very good at wading into the unknown, and there are tests for wading into the unknown, and I would be better than Aunt Debra at doing it, and we could do the test. One of my strengths. One of my weaknesses is communication. But one of my strengths is wading into the unknown, and so I can wade into the unknown. But she did not. She leapt to a conclusion. It helps me understand something that has puzzled me for years. I would never, nor could I believe Joey, would idly watch you be tortured. I'm confident. And maybe this whole talk of torture is what caused this comment to get hidden in the main video. But she's pretty confident that she would die before she allowed me to be tortured, to which I would say if I started healing the blind and people with cancer and people with depression with psilocybin and cannabis and illegal plants, practicing medicine without a license, if I got locked in a cage and separated from my family, would she organize the resistance to go begin fighting the government in order to free me from my captors, right? Or would I say, don't do it? And so she would, and Joey would be sitting by watching me be tortured, potentially being raped by people in prison, tortured because I am trying to be of service and be as productive as possible. Would you really do it? And then would you do it against my wishes? So I'm deeply sorry you don't know that. Joe would die first. You are loved beyond our understanding, I think. I think back and realize how little our involvement in others' lives may actually mean to them later. It fills our memories but fades in theirs. That's Satan's work, no doubt. Well, humans are the way humans are. All humans. So we remember the bad times as signals. It's kind of like that. That's the thing. If you agree with evolution, it's like we evolved to recognize those threats so that we stay alive. And that's what got selected for. And that's what a human is. But we'll have biases. We'll remember the good things we did more so than we'll remember the bad things we did. All these things are kind of these biases that we have as humans, which we have to be careful about when selecting for leaders in order to change the world. So even foreign countries are falling prey to this way of life. And that's because we're not very good at selecting our leaders. We don't actually care about running the tests to identify the people who have the right strengths and weaknesses and skills in order to do the best job such that we can produce the most good fruit possible. Nobody's doing that. Not even your church, not even your government, nothing. Nobody's doing it. No company. Everyone's making mistakes. And that's understandable. We're not perfect. Are you hurt, angry, Joey, nor me push God on you? I'm not hurt. I'm not angry. I was actually afraid of alienating you from him because of your environment. And I don't understand that. It's kind of like you believe God's all powerful. It doesn't matter what you do if God's all powerful. God's going to work. And I do think God has worked. I am the way I am because of God. And I like to think my father helped keep me from being corrupted by the influences of the culture and the minds of people who are corrupt. He kind of isolated me from that. So I longed for the day you'd want to join us for church. Well, it's just what is the goal of your church? If the goal of your church is creating the kingdom of heaven on earth, by becoming more productive and developing the right tools and processes, identifying the right people, then yeah, I'm all on board if that's your main goal. If your goal is different, then it's just we have different goals. We're not going to be members of the same church. I responded, I said, I told you I met Jesus and you believe I didn't. So that hurt, and that's how I responded last night. Because it sounded like she claimed that my encounter was from Satan, and I've actually had this response from people often where they just say, no, I believe that was a demon. I believe that was Satan. It's like, okay, well, when is it not? Yeah. Are you immune? Yeah. Not a lot of people behave as if they are immune to Satan or demons. I think some people are more or less immune, more or less careful. I'll put it that way. She responded, I never said I didn't believe you hadn't met him. I mean, that's how I read the point about the dreams from Satan. She said, no if in reference to your statement, if he was raised from the dead. There is no if in my mind. I could never question someone else's spiritual relationship personally. Only what they outwardly project is what I know. And that's even too confident. Like, you can't know what they outwardly project because your interpretation is just a reflection of what's within you, more so than it is a reflection of what's within them. And you did this. I mean, when you produce the words, you basically are allowing people to see what's within you. You share how you see. Like, I want you to know I love you. I want you to know that I know it's hard for single parents. I try to remind my children that I'm grateful to have my wife because I know the reason is that I know that how hard it is when there's a single parent. And it's like, I respect you and I love you. I appreciate you. So, this whole stuff about, God and Jesus and heaven and hell and Satan and all of that, the question really, I think, comes down to our goals. Like, my goal is to help create peace on earth by learning and growing and all of that. And it either is or is not your goal, and I'm not trying to convert you. I'm just trying to communicate my goals. I'm trying to be understood. I'm trying to invite people who have a similar goal to participate. And I'm just noting the fact that most people actually don't share that goal. And you could ask yourself, it's like, do you share that goal and why don't you? And so that's all I'm pointing at is these beliefs that you shared are the reasons why you don't actually have the same goal that I have. And, I think you believe that God is all powerful and God will do it. And if that's true, then my work will not matter. I'm doing a contingency plan. So if you're right, we're all fine. Maybe I'm not fine, but that's my choice. If I'm right, then you'll be glad that I did what I did. That's the way I look at it. All right. I love you. Bye-bye.